Okay, so thank you very much for having me, Robert Treat. When you say it's the first, official keynote for the first PGDay in Armenia, then I feel there's like extra pressure I hadn't really considered, but hopefully I will do it okay. Let me remove my hat. We'll pretend we're professional. So I did think I wore an Amazon shirt. There's a smile on the sleeve, so I really do work for Amazon. But the talk that I want to give today, talking about Postgres and Amazon, I should say Amazon has been using Postgres and working with Postgres and contributing to Postgres. Like, their story is very long. My story with Amazon is actually very short. So I only joined Amazon about 15 months ago. So I now find myself in a unique position where I get to actually tell this story, but it's more of an outsider's view of how Amazon interacted with the Postgres community, but I get to say it because I work for Amazon now. So this is, I don't know how official this is, but this is sort of what I have observed because I've been paying attention to Amazon and its Postgres relationship for a long time. So that's sort of the angle that I'm going with. So I will talk about some of the services that they've had. If you have questions, I can try to answer them, but I will be honest, my team, we work on community stuff, so I don't actually know these products super inside and out. I've used most of them, so I will try to help if I can, and maybe I can get you connected to people if nothing else. So let's talk about where their journey actually started, and it actually goes all the way back to 2013. This is actually kind of the first big Postgres-related splash, and you would say, okay, so they launched this thing, Amazon Redshift. Do people know what Amazon Redshift is? Because it's not an obvious Postgres thing. But it is database as a service that does analytics. It's focused on analytics. And why I say this is the first sort of Postgres thing that they did is the history of Redshift. It actually started like way back in, I think we decided it was 8.0.3 or something. There was a fork of Postgres by a company called Paracel, which I don't actually think is around. They were bought by somebody and sold by somebody else and then acquired over here. And eventually it ends up at Amazon. But it was a Postgres fork, and they changed the insides better for analytical queries instead of typical transaction queries. And so that ends up, and that is launched, and it's a proprietary fork of Postgres. But that was the first sort of Postgres-related thing that they launched, right? And I thought, okay, that's interesting. For those who are old enough to remember, in 2013, Amazon had another sort of big database service that it had launched, and it was up and running, and that was RDS for MySQL, right? So me back in 2013 looking at Amazon and thinking like, it'd be nice if Amazon was actually involved with Postgres and helping Postgres, and looking at the services, and they have a MySQL service and they have a proprietary fork of Postgres. And I'm thinking, that's not a Postgres company there. So, I don't know what the deal is, but they don't have it figured out yet, in my mind. But there's a idea that we talk about within Amazon. And I think it's easy to be cynical about these sort of corporate, slogans that companies have. And one that they talk about a lot at Amazon is customer obsession, right? They want to do the best thing for the customer and listen to the customer and build services to help customers. And one of the main things they kept getting asked by customers when they had this RDS for MySQL was, when are you going to have RDS for Postgres? We want RDS for Postgres. You build RDS for Postgres, we will bring our workloads to your cloud system, right? So they heard that, and a few years go by, and eventually in 2013 they actually launch an RDS for Postgres, and so everyone is happy. We now have Postgres on Amazon. It launched on version 9.3.2, so quite a ways back, as you can see, with just 21 extensions. That was it. But it was a start, right? We now actually could do it, and I think anyone who was in the community at that time, it was noticeable the number of new people we had coming into the community who their first experience was through RDS Postgres. And so there was good in that we got a lot of new users, and then there was bad in that many of the questions they had were related to the service platform, and we didn't know how to answer those questions because none of us had used it yet. It was also very new. So, but I was happy at least that they had a Postgres version out there, right? So that seemed like a plus to me. Further sort of listening to the customer obsession angle and what they were hearing from customers are, a lot of times when it comes to databases and building databases, and you see this with a lot of databases now and the whole sort of NoSQL movement, that there are sometimes trade-offs that people want to make for their database that we would probably not want in the community Postgres because they don't make sense for large enough audiences or a wide enough group of users. And so Amazon Aurora was launched with Postgres compatibility. And I'm not gonna dive into Postgres compatibility. That's like a whole nother talk discussing that. But the main idea was this looks very much like a Postgres with trade-offs that were specifically for the cloud. And so it gave them sort of a way to build a service that could make those trade-offs. And it, if the community was interested, maybe it makes sense. But if you're running on big iron or you're doing your own hardware, that type of thing, these changes won't really make sense for you. So that launched in 2017. So you can see a few years later, they continued to invest in Postgres. They built out more services and sort of kept moving forward. And so this, again, I think this is an improvement because now I see okay, they've launched one service with Postgres. Now they've launched a second one, and you can see they're putting development in there. But still, I was looking at this this is still services that they are launching that are Postgres related. I don't know, if the customers go away, do the services just shut down? What happens with that? How invested are they really? And then they made this announcement, which I thought was important in 2019, which was when they migrated off of Oracle. So Postgres is a huge part of that, where they moved their consumer and digital business off of Oracle onto Postgres, amongst some other databases like Dynamo and whatnot. But the stats that I was given, again, I wasn't there, but this is what they told me. I do tend to believe them, that they had over 7,500 databases running with Postgres with 75 petabytes of data. So when you think about that, that is a huge amount of Postgres to run for anybody, right? Even at Amazon scale, that's a lot of Postgres going on. And again, it sort of made me feel better that okay, they're not just launching services now, right? They're actually using the product, and they've sort of made the product, they've tied their future with the future of Postgres, right? They've decided that Postgres is mature enough that they can run their business on it. And I think a lot of companies since then have also made that. And it also made one discussion that I've had to have, I've been doing open source now for 30 years or so. And there's always this question of does anybody really use this for anything real? You always hear that, whatever the open source thing is. And then finally, I could just go to somebody and say, will it work for my workload? Maybe my workload's too big. I was like, is your workload bigger than Amazon? Okay, it's not bigger than Amazon, so you could use Postgres for that. So it made it very simple. Even though I didn't work for Amazon, I was like, that's the answer that you can give, and nobody's really going to argue with that. So I was pretty happy to see that happen, and I thought, this is pretty interesting. Another one of the things that we talk about a lot in Amazon, sort of leadership principles that we have, is this idea that success and scale bring broad responsibility. And what that sort of means is that at the size and scope that Amazon operates, we can have significant impact on many of the communities and ecosystems that we're involved with, and that we should actually try to proactively improve those. And one of the things that happened, so after 2019, when they had said they're using Postgres, and we knew, those of us in the community, we knew there were some people in Amazon who were doing a little bit of contribution. And then COVID kind of hit, and it sort of changed a lot of conversations and the whole conference thing. I've been to, I don't even know, 6 conferences in the last 2 weeks or something. I don't know. It's a lot of conferences I've done really lately. But in COVID time, there were very few of us who were still actually going out to conferences and meeting people. And I was one of those people, and I had the opportunity to talk to some folks in Amazon leadership who I probably wouldn't normally have had the opportunity otherwise, except the numbers kind of have shrunk. And I'm not going to say this is all because of what I said, but since it's my talk, I get to be the hero in the talk. So I had this conversation where some of the folks in the Amazon leadership asked me, they said, look, we love Postgres, we're using Postgres, we're building services on Postgres, but we don't have a great relationship with the community. And what is it going to take to make that relationship better? And I said, well, I'm going to give you the answer. It's very simple. I don't know if you're going to like it. But the truth is, until you have multiple people who are working full-time on community open source Postgres, not on RDS, not on Aurora, just focused on community open source, you need those people to be operating, and until you do that, you will always have a bad relationship with the community, because there are just too many companies who are much smaller who are able to actually put that together. And again, at your size and your scale, it's, in my mind, you have a responsibility to give back to the open source community and to make sure that Postgres is thriving and growing. So a few years later, I guess that was ingested. Again, probably not just because I said that. I think there were others in the community, leaders in the Postgres community who were also having those conversations. But they eventually did launch Amazon's Postgres contributors team. So this is actually the team that I work on. And we are solely focused on open source Postgres. Most of the folks on the team, we have, I think there are 13 people now on the team, 10 of whom are major contributors to Postgres, 7 of whom are committers to the Postgres code base. We have a couple people on the security team, and we work in other, like sysadmin team and other sort of areas of organization and leadership within the project. And actually, based on the numbers I heard from Claire from Microsoft, like we are now actually the leading conference sponsor for conferences around the world. So we're trying to sort of put that imprint in a way that we can and sustain the growth of the Postgres community. So I also, it may be a little hard to see the graph there, but you see this sort of huge like spike in the graph there. What I like to tell leadership is that's the Amazon stock price as soon as you form the Postgres contributor team. But it's actually the number of commits in Postgres. So there were a few that were coming from Amazon, and then this team was formed, and you can see like it immediately jumps up because you hire a bunch of people who are committers and developers, and suddenly you let them focus on Postgres, suddenly you get a lot more Postgres done. So I was pretty happy to see this, and again, like our focus is like how do we build and grow and sustain the Postgres community and help them to move forward. So we've done a lot of contributions. I'm not going to go through all of these. I wanted to highlight a few over the last couple of releases. I think my favorite in 17 was this one, up to 6x performance improvements with vacuum. This was around like on very large tables when you collect like dead tuples and having to do multiple index loops. It's a little bit complicated, but we implemented this radix tree memory management piece, which sort of changed how very large tables were vacuumed and the performance implications of that. And that actually got me so excited. I really started talking to the Amazon people. I should mention, when they formed that Postgres contributors team, the guy who's in the picture there, this is Joe Conway. He's the manager of the team, and he's been doing Postgres longer than I have, actually. So, I mean, from way back in the very, very beginnings, he was doing Postgres. He actually asked me to join the team. He said, "Are you interested in coming to this team at Amazon? We're putting it together." And I turned him down. I said, "No." I said, to be honest, like I don't think Amazon is really going to do this correctly. Like I'm too skeptical. I said, "Call me. If you're still there in 3 years, give me a call and maybe we'll talk." So 17, I saw that go in, and that was a problem that I really had. And I remember having tried to solve this vacuum problem, like talking to developers over the years, and we never could come up with a solution. And then it was like, somehow these guys figured it out and they put it together, and I was like super excited. So I started doing benchmarking during the release cycle and all that. And again, this is all pre-Amazon for me, at least. And so that one really excited me. I was glad to see that. Then in 18, I think the favorite one I had was this NB tree skip scan. The skip scan thing allows you to use indexes for more types of queries. So it's kind of subtle, but it's one of those things where like you just get to the new version, and then like maybe queries start going faster, and maybe you can drop some indexes, and you get more sort of bang for your buck out of Postgres. So I was pretty happy with that. And then of course these are Postgres 19 ones, so obviously they're all made up because we don't really know what's going to be in 19. But the one I like to highlight, Auto Vacuum 2.0, the person who was sort of the main committer behind that is Nathan Bossart, who's on our team, and he hates it when I call it Auto Vacuum 2.0. So I try to figure out how can I go to conferences and call it Auto Vacuum 2.0, so he has to sort of live with that name. But it's an overhaul of how Auto Vacuum's algorithm works. So right now it's not a particularly smart algorithm. It kind of looks at like the order of the table creation and then like processes that and figures out what it should do with the tables. This actually creates a score based on like, are you close to wraparound, or do you have a lot of bloat, or whatever. There's a bunch of different sort of configuration variables, and you can configure that from the administrator side as well. So it makes it much smarter, and then it's added views and functions, so you can actually see what it's thinking about the different tables and what they ought to do. So I'm pretty excited about that one. I think that'll help a lot of people. So I think I want to highlight this in that, we've gone from like MySQL service and forks, like all the way to like putting in significant features that now really are helping DBAs. And so that was part of why I was looking at this Amazon, and I started talking to Joe about, hey, if you still got a spot, like I think I'm interested in joining and seeing what you guys are all about. There's one last thing I sort of want to mention is this idea of thinking big. That's another sort of leadership principle that we have. And again, I don't want to like belay the details of it, but I would say like this Amazon Redshift, it was started, so many years ago. It's actually used quite a bit internally. It's another service that other teams in Amazon consume. You can now run much larger, bigger versions of Redshift if you want to. And that's sort of been nice to see that not only have they launched the services, but they continue to invest in growing those services. RDS today, we actually support 11.22 through 18 with 92 extensions. So again, we've widened the scope of what is available in RDS. And for better or worse, we've kept some of these old versions alive. I think it's for better, but it's sometimes tricky. Amazon Aurora, again, similar, right? Like, so we've continued to maintain multiple releases of Aurora, and now there are different sort of flavors of Aurora that are out there, again, showing different trade-offs. And each of those has a group of people who work for support and development of those within Amazon. So the investment just continues to grow and get wider and bigger. And all of that, you know, I found that pretty exciting. We've also been working with the community, trying to figure out, like, how do we find the people who are out there who are trying to push the limits of Postgres when it comes to things like hardware and CPU architectures. What kind of workloads are we seeing? I'm sure you're aware there's this thing called AI, and like people are pushing Postgres in all new ways because of the AI workloads. So we're in the middle of that conversation with folks as well, trying to figure out like how big of a machine can we get it, and how do we make Postgres work better on those very large machines for those very large workloads. Things like vector data, you know, it pushes the bounds of Postgres in ways that other things haven't done in the past. Let me skip through a few of these. So we've done a bunch of vector improvements, and like I said, I don't want to belay that. The last thing I want to talk about is this Aurora DSQL, which you may have heard of. There was a couple of talks on it last year. I think in New York there was a pretty good one that I saw. And the thing I want to mention about this is not so much like maybe there's trade-offs. This is a new one. It's sort of multi-region, and it tries to do magic sharding under the hood and all that. If that's the kind of thing you're interested in, I would definitely say check it out. I thought it was very interesting because I'm a database nerd, I guess, right? Like I just look at, I'm interested in looking at different ways people make databases and create them. And in this one, like one of the things that blew my mind, so in Postgres we talk a lot about, it's not, you know, we use this process per connection model instead of a threaded model. In Aurora DSQL, they actually are basically like, what if we launched a whole new VM for every connection and like we tied that back to the data? Like it's sort of mind-blowing to think about. But the important, like, again, if you're a database nerd, feel free to check it out. The thing that I think is important that I wanted to highlight with this is that, so they launched this new service last year, and knowing that like there was, you know, multiple years of development that got them to be able to launch the service. And I thought about that of like, you know, how much money are they actually spending, again, to launch a brand new service that's based on Postgres, right? That's the core of where it started. And so that tells you that sort of even Amazon, right, it's like, it is one of the biggest companies in the world. And if you think about what they're doing, it's like they're still making new bets on Postgres. It isn't just that they're expanding the old stuff. It isn't just that they're trying to, you know, get contributors and contribute more code. Like they're launching whole new services, even if it means we're going to spend, you know, millions of dollars before we see anything, before we even launch it. We're still willing to make that investment. So I know, like from that standpoint, like our leadership is saying, like Postgres is a long-term part of the Amazon vision. So if any of you are out there sort of wondering, like, is Postgres worth learning? Like, is the AI just going to like make me and Postgres go away because, you know, all that is happening? And that's things to think about and be concerned about on some level. But I know, like, I always think back, like, I made this bet on Postgres, you know, back in the previous century, to be honest. And so I've watched it grow all these years, and I've been super excited with, you know, the results of that. But seeing that these folks who are not, you know, deep in the weeds of Postgres every day, but as business strategists and sort of thinking about where they want to take, again, one of the largest companies in the world, they're saying you should bet on Postgres, right? We know it's going to be there. We're going to keep sustaining it. And other companies out there of the size and scale of Amazon are also sort of seeing that and making that same bet. So I hope all of you will see that for what it is and understand that, like, hey, there's a big future in Postgres. It seems like we're really big now. There's still plenty of room to grow and plenty more to do. And I hope Amazon will continue to be a part of that. So that's it for today. Again, if you have questions about any of this, community work or whatnot, I'm happy to answer them. Just find me somewhere in the conference and we can chat about that. So thank you very much.